Charlie Sadoff is the director of an important film, Against All Enemies. Against All Enemies refers to the oath that is taken by the United States military and by many others who swear full faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. One of those people, these domestic enemies, who wants to overthrow the American system, replace it with a dictatorship. In his case, a theocracy, a religious dictatorship, is retired Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who was once called and thought of as the most skilled intelligence officer of his generation. Michael Flynn was admired. Michael Flynn was fired by Barack Obama. He was promoted one step above his level of competence. He always had, it turns out, a penchant for conspiracies. He didn't know where the truth in the conspiracy started and ended. And so he became increasingly delirious in his ability to assess intelligence. And Michael Flynn's career fizzled out. He was angry. He was bitter. A retired lieutenant general found his way to MAGA, to Donald Trump, to foreign government representations. He was sitting on the inaugural platform on the phone with representatives of the Turkish government minutes before walking into the White House. His antics with the Russians and other foreign powers were highly suspicious. His behavior was off the wall. And Michael Flynn didn't last very long in the Trump White House, but now Trump promises to bring Michael Flynn back for a second term, while Michael Flynn is off in the woods in a compound with automatic weapons preparing for civil war, training a force, recruiting people all around the country as part of a religious cadre. I'm not making any of this up. It's all in the film. We're going to talk about Michael Flynn. You need to understand more about Michael Flynn because Michael Flynn is a real threat to the Republic. I'm curious listening to you if the name Robert E. Lee ever comes up when you talk about any of this with any of these groups, any of the people that become involved in it. How central is he mythologically at the core of this?
So General Lee's name doesn't come up, but there's another general whose name comes up a lot, and that's General Michael Flynn. The thing that's really interesting to me about Flynn is that when he was part of the Obama administration, he was promoted to the head of, I believe it was Defense Intelligence. And Leon Panetta, in his ceremony, in the promotion ceremony, says, "No one has a greater understanding of the 21st century battlefield than Michael Flynn." And obviously, the 21st century battlefield is online. And so now Michael Flynn is engaged in recruiting what he calls an army of digital soldiers. And, it can be argued what he wants those digital soldiers to do. What he's doing right now is encourage people to run for office.
I'm going to stop you right there for a second because I don't think that's correct, right? I think it's perfectly clear. And I think it's perfectly clear, right? I think you address that with a figure of speech, right? But it's perfectly clear what he wants to have happen. And in fact, there's another documentary that appeared on Frontline and the Associated Press, which I have no doubt that you've seen, where Michelle Smith, who is the superb AP reporter who leads the story, at the end of this documentary, she goes for a walk in the woods. And it is a park-like area. And then you hear the sound of automatic weapons fire. Families on one side of the giant fence with razor wire on top of it, and Michael Flynn's compound on the other side, where they're training for what? They're training for civil war. According to who? According to you? According to me? According to General Flynn. That is what they are doing. And so I just think it's important for the audience to understand the perfect clarity of the motive, of the intentionality of what it is these folks are doing 9 years in to an unfolding event that is closer and closer and closer and closer to doing real damage to the core foundation, the keystone, the cornerstone of the country.
Yeah, I mean, so in the film, we have Chris Goldsmith. He speaks very eloquently about Michael Flynn and what his objectives are, which is to create a country where the country is separated by your in and out group. And it's all about power for him, obviously. And so, yeah, I won't disagree with what you're saying about what Flynn's intentions are. But back to what I was saying before, his knowledge, I don't think he should be taken lightly, because as Panetta said, he understands how to foment and create insurgencies, because he spent his entire career trying to figure out how to combat them. And so that's what makes him particularly dangerous, because if his intent is to foment an insurgency or an insurrection against the government of the United States, there's probably no one more capable of figuring out how to do that.
Do you have any sense if anybody in the United States Army, in the institution of the United States Army, the retired 4-star officer corps, do any of them look at Flynn and say, we have a problem here that exceeds a corrupt general, an abusive general, a criminal general?
Well, we spoke to Stan McChrystal in the film, and he and Flynn have been friends and colleagues for years. And I think that General McChrystal, he views Flynn now as sort of a political figure. And I think he thinks what he's doing is dangerous, but I don't know that there's been any sort of collective action or anyone's gotten together behind the scenes to figure out what they can do about it. Not that I'm aware of. And, Flynn, it's one thing that's interesting, Flynn's spoken out was, claimed that coronavirus was created by the government to help get control of the people. This whole sort of regurgitating the same idea about installing chips into people as a means of getting control of them, which is something was this conspiracy theory going back to the 80s with Nelson Rockefeller. And he's spoken out against the U.S. government, and he's a convicted felon, but I believe he's still getting his Army pension. So it's not even, they haven't even taken any kind of action against him whatsoever. So I don't know. I don't think there's been any sort of talk about what can be done about him amongst other groups of retired generals.
Thank you for listening to my political commentary. If you like what you heard today, please also consider subscribing to The Warning daily newsletter on Substack.